If your Irish family has dark hair, deep brown eyes, and a complexion that never quite matched the pale, red-haired image of Ireland, you may carry one of the country's oldest mysteries in your last name. For centuries, people whispered about the Black Irish, those dark-featured families who seemed to come from somewhere else entirely. Spanish sailors, ancient travelers, foreign invaders. The theories are everywhere, but most are wrong. One name here points to the real answer, older and stranger than the legend that everyone repeats. If that name is yours, your family has been hiding it in plain sight. Number 10. Walsh. Here is a secret hiding in plain sight inside one of Ireland's most common surnames, a name you will find in nearly every Irish town and phone book. Walsh does not come from Gaelic at all. It literally means Welshman, or more broadly, foreigner, given to the Cambro-Norman soldiers and settlers who came to Ireland from Wales in the wake of the Norman invasion of the 12th century. Families bearing this name were, by the very definition of their own surname, outsiders who became Irish. Historical records trace the name directly to these foreign arrivals who landed, settled, married into the local population, and within just a few generations were completely indistinguishable from the Gaelic families around them, speaking the same language and answering to the same chieftains. That is not a small detail to pass over. One of the most Irish names imaginable, carried today by hundreds of thousands of proud Irish families, is at its very root a name that means not from here. That was a foreigner hiding behind a plainly foreign name. The family that follows told the same story of outsiders becoming Irish, except it wore a fully Gaelic disguise. Number 9. Costello. This name looks and sounds thoroughly, unmistakably Irish, but it belongs to one of the very first Hiberno-Norman families to do something genuinely remarkable. The Costellos descended from Norman settlers who deliberately adopted a Gaelic-style surname structure, effectively rebranding themselves as an Irish clan rather than a foreign noble house. Families bearing this name represent the exact historical moment when the invaders stopped being invaders and started becoming natives, a profound transformation documented in the historical records of medieval Connacht. That is the twist genuinely worth sitting with. The name itself was a choice, a deliberate and permanent act of a foreign family consciously deciding to belong, to become Irish not by birth but by will. Most people never hear that part of it. Assimilation is one thread of this mystery. The family that follows brings us closer to the dark features sitting at the very heart of it. Number 8. Cullen. In Irish folk tradition, this name has long been associated with dark coloring, sometimes linked in popular etymology to holly, with its deep green leaves and dark red berries, and more broadly to the darker featured families of the Irish southeast. Now, folk etymology is not the same thing as proven linguistic origin, and the true root of the name is genuinely debated among scholars, so this connection is tradition rather than settled fact. But what really matters here is that Cullen sits squarely within the older Gaelic population, the people who were already in Ireland long before any Norman knight or Viking longship ever arrived, and who carried a far wider range of physical features than the pale, freckled, red-haired stereotype ever suggested. Families bearing this name are a powerful reminder that dark hair and dark eyes in Ireland were never foreign imports at all. They were always there, from the very beginning. This is not a small detail. Native darkness is one part of the picture. The family that follows makes the foreign connection impossible to ignore, because it literally means dark, stranger. Number 7. Doyle. This is where the mystery sharpens into something you can almost reach out and touch. Doyle comes from the Old Irish dubgal, meaning dark stranger or dark foreigner, a very specific term the Gaelic Irish used for the Vikings, and in particular for the Danish Norse, as opposed to the fair-haired Norwegians they called by a different name entirely. Families bearing this name carry, encoded directly into their surname, the living memory of the Norse invaders who raided the coasts, founded towns, settled the land, and ultimately blended completely into the Irish population across centuries of contact, conflict, and marriage. Historical and linguistic records tie the name directly to this deep Norse presence in Ireland. That is the twist, genuinely worth sitting with. A common, everyday Irish surname is, in its oldest form, an Irish word for a foreigner who came across the sea and never left, whose descendants became as Irish as anyone. A dark stranger is one kind of darkness. The family that follows strips the whole mystery down to a single, unmistakable word. Number 6. Duff, and its close relative Duffy. This name comes directly and unmistakably from the Irish word dub, meaning black or dark, one of the most ancient and literal color words in the entire Irish language. Families bearing this name were quite likely described, many generations ago, by exactly the physical feature this whole mystery revolves around: dark hair, dark eyes, or a dark complexion, singled out and marked by their own neighbors with a plain, honest name that simply meant the Dark One. Gaelic naming records preserve Dub as a personal descriptor stretching back well over 1,000 years, long before any foreign legend was ever attached to Irish darkness. Most people never hear that part. The Black Irish are not always hiding behind an exotic foreign legend imported from overseas. Sometimes the darkness is sitting right there in the name itself, in plain, ordinary Irish. That darkness was homegrown. The family that follows takes us west instead, to a city where Ireland met the wider world. Number 5. Kirwan. This is one of the famous tribes of Galway, the 14 powerful merchant families who dominated that Atlantic port city for centuries and ran its trade, its politics, and its wealth. And Galway matters enormously to this entire story, because it was Ireland's great western gateway to the wider world, the beating heart of Irish trade with Spain, Portugal, and the broader Mediterranean. Families bearing this name lived and worked at the exact point where the Irish and Iberian worlds met and mingled through generation after generation of commerce, with sailors, merchants, cargo, and marriages flowing steadily back and forth across the open sea. Historical records of the Galway tribes carefully preserve exactly these deep, sustained continental connections. That is the twist genuinely worth sitting with here. Long before any Spanish Armada was ever wrecked on a rock, Ireland's entire west coast was already thoroughly intertwined with Iberia through nothing more dramatic than ordinary, everyday trade. That was one Galway merchant family. The family that follows deepens that same Galway connection even further. Number 4. Lynch. Another of the powerful tribes of Galway, and one of the very most influential of them all, the Lynch family produced mayors, merchants, and traders whose reach extended far across the sea to the busy ports of Spain and well beyond. Families bearing this name stood at the very heart of the centuries of Iberian contact that quietly shaped Ireland's entire Atlantic coast, a connection built not on invasion or shipwreck, but on the slow, steady, unglamorous exchange of trade and intermarriage over hundreds of years. Historical records of Galway preserve the Lynch name right at the center of this bustling maritime world. This is not a small detail to overlook. The real Iberian thread running through Irish ancestry was patiently woven by merchants and sailors across many centuries, not dropped ashore by a single dramatic storm in one year. Trade carried the mystery quietly. The family that follows wears it openly, because the name simply means black. Number 3. Blake. Yet another of the famous tribes of Galway. But this name carries a twist that ties the whole story together in a single word. Blake derives from a nickname meaning black, given originally to a Norman family, the Cadels, one of whose dark-featured members became known simply as the Black One, and whose descendants carried that vivid nickname forward as their permanent surname. Families bearing this name sit at the exact intersection of two major threads of this entire mystery at once: Norman ancestry and dark physical features, fused together into a single surname. Historical records of the Galway tribes preserve this transformation from Norman nickname to established Irish surname directly, tracing the family through generations of Galway's merchant elite. Most people never hear that part of it. A name that literally means black, carried by a family of Norman origin, rooted in an Irish port city that traded constantly with Spain, is very nearly the entire Black Irish mystery compressed neatly into one surname. One family compressed the mystery. The family that follows is the greatest foreign dynasty ever to become Irish. Number 2. Fitzgerald. This is one of the most powerful and storied surnames in all of Irish history, and it did not begin in Ireland at all. The Fitzgeralds were a Cambro-Norman dynasty, descended from Norman and Welsh nobility, who arrived during the 12th century invasion and rose over the centuries to become earls, rulers, kingmakers, and rebels who shaped the fate of the entire island. But here is what makes them absolutely essential to this particular story. The Fitzgeralds became, in the famous phrase of the era, more Irish than the Irish themselves, adopting the Irish language, Irish Brehon law, Irish dress, Irish poetry, and Irish loyalties so thoroughly and so completely that the English crown eventually came to see them not as loyal subjects, but as a dangerous, native threat to be crushed. Families bearing this name are the ultimate living proof of the real Black Irish story. that Ireland absorbed wave after wave after wave of foreigners, Norman, Welsh, Norse, and Continental alike, and made every last one of them fully Irish, features and all, until no one could tell where the foreigner ended and the Irishman began. And now we arrive at the name and the legend that nearly everyone gets completely wrong. Number 1. The Spanish surname legend itself, and the names tied to it, like Sullivan and the countless dark-featured families who have proudly claimed descent from shipwrecked Spanish Armada sailors. Say it slowly, because this is where the myth finally meets the truth. For centuries, the single most popular explanation for the Black Irish has been romantic and beautifully simple. In 1588, the Great Spanish Armada was scattered and wrecked along the storm-battered Irish coast, and the survivors, so the story goes, came ashore, settled among the local people, married in, and gave Ireland its dark hair and dark eyes. It is a wonderful legend, told at countless family gatherings for generations. It is also, according to the historians who have actually studied it, almost entirely wrong. Most Armada survivors who reached Irish shores were killed, captured, or eventually made their way back to Spain. The number who genuinely stayed, settled, and raised Irish families was tiny, nowhere near enough to explain a feature found in every corner of the island, from Donegal to Cork. The real answer is older, deeper, and far more remarkable than any single shipwreck could ever be. Ireland's dark features come from thousands of years of layered ancestry stacked one upon another. Ancient Iberian-linked settlers who arrived by sea after the Ice Age and left a genuine, measurable genetic mark on the population, centuries of Norse and Norman blending after wave upon wave of invasion and settlement, and generation after generation of ordinary Atlantic trade with Spain and Portugal that flowed through busy ports like Galway long before 1588 was ever a date on a calendar. The shipwreck legend survives because it is dramatic and easy to tell in a single sentence. The truth survives because it is written into the names themselves. The name does not prove that any single modern family descends from one Armada sailor swept onto the rocks. But historically, the Black Irish belong to something far grander than a legend about a shipwreck, an entire island that spent thousands of years quietly absorbing the wider world and making every piece of it unmistakably Irish. 10 names. 10 different doors into the same remarkable truth, that Ireland was never the isolated, pale, red-haired island of stereotype, but a living crossroads of the entire Atlantic world, absorbing Welsh foreigners, Norman lords, Norse raiders, and Iberian traders across thousands of years, and weaving every one of them into a single unified people. A surname is never just a label sitting quietly on a document, filled in without a second thought by someone who never asked what it truly meant. It is a compressed history, carrying invasions, migrations, trade routes, shipwrecks, and the slow, steady, centuries-long blending of separate peoples into something entirely new. The Black Irish are not a foreign accident dropped onto Irish shores by a single storm and a scattered fleet. They are Ireland itself, in all its ancient, layered, dark-featured depth, exactly as it has always truly been. If one of these names is yours, you are not carrying a foreign secret smuggled in from somewhere else. You are carrying the real, unvarnished story of Ireland. Comment your surname below, along with the county your family comes from, and tell me which forgotten name, legend, or bloodline you want decoded next. Because somewhere out there, another ordinary name is still quietly waiting to reveal a history far older and far stranger than the myth attached to it.